Most relationships don't die in fights. They die in sentences. You owe me. All men are trash. Just leave then. Each phrase is a nail in the coffin of respect. And once it's buried, there's no love left to save. In this video, we'll dissect the 6 phrases women say that instantly expose who they really are and why every man who ignores them ends up grieving a relationship that was already dead. Listen closely because these aren't words of love. They're the funeral hymns of it. There's a moment in every relationship when the mask slips not through action but through words. The human mouth is the most accurate lie detector ever invented. People can fake affection, they can rehearse empathy, but they can't fake consistency in language. Words are fingerprints, and sooner or later they reveal exactly who someone is beneath the performance. You see, in healthy relationships, words are tools of connection. They build bridges, they soothe, they clarify. But in toxic dynamics, words become weapons. They don't heal, they shape reality. Every phrase becomes a subtle test, a small negotiation for control. You may think she's simply venting or being dramatic, but what she's really doing is showing you the blueprint of her psychology, one phrase at a time. Here's what most men miss. Toxicity doesn't start with screaming or betrayal. It starts quietly in the language. A comment slipped into an argument, a joke with a sharp edge, a phrase repeated just enough times that it starts to sound normal. By the time you realize it, you're no longer reacting to her words. You're conditioned by them. In my experience, when a woman feels threatened, cornered, or entitled, her real beliefs leak through her vocabulary. She'll use words that grant her permission to control, to guilt, to dismiss. Words that sound like emotion but are actually calculation. These are not random slips. They are deliberate linguistic signatures, habits that form over years of unchecked manipulation. That's why awareness is power, because once you start listening not for what she says, but how she says it, the entire illusion collapses. You begin to see patterns, the entitlement, the moral superiority, the victimhood, the very architecture of manipulation hidden behind everyday conversation. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. You start noticing the same phrases echoing across stories, relationships, even social media. 6 of them stand out. 6 sentences that instantly expose who she really is. Let's break them down one by one. Number 1, you owe me. This isn't affection. It's a debt notice wrapped in a smile. When a woman says those 3 words, she's not asking, she's collecting. It's not a request. It's a demand wearing perfume. The moment you owe me enters a relationship, love stops being a connection and becomes a currency. Every act of kindness turns into a transaction. Every gesture becomes a line item in an emotional ledger that never balances. She doesn't see you as a man. She sees you as an ATM that breathes. It's subtle at first. You owe me a nice life because I gave you children. You owe me happiness because I stayed with you. You owe me comfort because I chose you. Sounds logical, doesn't it? But underneath those words lies a belief system that your existence is her compensation. Your value isn't who you are, it's what you provide. This is the mindset of entitlement, not partnership. Entitlement turns gratitude into leverage. It uses guilt to manipulate, affection to bind, and sacrifice to enslave. She'll remind you of everything she's ever done, but never acknowledge what you've given. In her world, reciprocity doesn't exist. Love flows one way toward her needs, her moods, her demands. What makes this phrase so poisonous is its endless interest rate. You can never pay enough. The more you give, the more she expects. She'll twist every act of generosity into proof that she was right to demand it in the first place. You owe me becomes a bottomless pit where your effort, your money, and your peace disappear. Healthy love says, thank you. Entitled love says, finally. The difference is respect. Gratitude builds intimacy. Entitlement kills it. When a woman tells you you owe me, listen carefully. What she's really saying is, your life exists for my comfort. Your sacrifices are the price of my happiness. That's not love, that's employment. And you never signed the contract. Number 2, I don't owe you anything. At first it sounds strong, independent, empowered. But listen closer and you'll hear something darker. Not independence, but indifference. This phrase isn't about freedom, it's about superiority. She says it when you bring up something that hurts you or when you ask for mutual respect. Maybe you mention that you feel uncomfortable about her late-night messages to another man. Her response, I don't owe you anything. And just like that, your feelings become irrelevant. This is the battle cry of someone who wants all the benefits of connection with none of the responsibility. She wants commitment without accountability, intimacy without vulnerability. It's emotional freeloading, enjoying the shelter of a relationship while insisting she's still a free agent. The deeper truth is this: I don't owe you anything is not a declaration of autonomy. It's a denial of empathy. It says your needs are inconvenient, your emotions are interruptions. It strips you of the right to even voice your discomfort, framing it as control or insecurity. This phrase creates an invisible hierarchy where she's at the top, immune to consequence, untouchable by criticism. You, on the other hand, are expected to give endlessly time, energy, understanding, forgiveness. But the moment you ask for the same, she retreats behind her shield of false independence. Healthy independence coexists with accountability. It says, I'm my own person, but I respect how my choices affect you. Toxic independence says, my choices are sacred and your pain is irrelevant. One creates partnership, the other breeds distance when you hear, I don't owe you anything. Understand what's really being said. It's not about freedom, it's about control. It's not about equality, it's about emotional hierarchy. Because when someone truly values you, they don't need to owe you to care. They act with respect because they choose to, not because they're forced to. And when she says she owes you nothing, she isn't drawing boundaries, she's erasing yours. Number 3, all men are trash. The moment she says it, she's not describing men, she's describing her own pain. This phrase isn't a truth. It's a scar speaking. It's not an opinion. It's a wound demanding validation. What sounds like confidence is actually bitterness dressed up as wisdom. All men are trash is a shield, not a belief. It protects her from disappointment by guaranteeing it before it even happens. Because if she convinces herself that every man will fail her, she never has to risk trusting one. But here's the cost. When she labels all men as broken, she locks herself inside the cage she built. Every gesture of kindness becomes suspicion. Every flaw becomes confirmation. She's not in a relationship with you. She's in a relationship with her narrative. I've seen men try to fight this mindset. They bend over backwards to prove they're different. They overgive, over-apologize, overperform. And still, it's never enough. Because this isn't about evidence. It's about identity. She's chosen to be the victim, and victims need villains. This phrase reveals a psychological loop called confirmation bias of pain. Every interaction is filtered through past betrayal. Forget one detail. Typical man, show emotion. Men are weak. Stay composed. Men are cold. There's no version of you that wins because she's not seeing you. She's seeing the ghost of someone who hurt her long ago. The tragedy is that this bitterness often hides deep fear. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of being wrong again. But instead of healing, she converts pain into ideology. And once pain becomes a worldview, love becomes impossible. When a woman says, all men are trash, don't argue. Don't try to prove her wrong. She doesn't want evidence. She wants validation for her bitterness. You can't love someone out of their cynicism. You're not her partner. You're her next case study in why love always fails. And the conclusion is already written. Number 4, I'm just a girl. She says it with a laugh, a shrug, maybe even a pout. But make no mistake, this is not humility, it's strategy. I'm just a girl is how accountability gets dressed in innocence. That sounds harmless, even sweet. You forget the bill. Oops, I'm just a girl. She overspends, stirs up chaos, or starts a scene. And suddenly it's because she's emotional, because she's a woman, because that's just how girls are. Each time she says it, responsibility quietly dies a little more. This is what psychologists call weaponized incompetence, the deliberate act of appearing incapable to shift burdens onto someone else. And it works brilliantly on men who were raised to protect, fix, and forgive. She knows you'll step in. You'll manage the crisis, smooth the conflict, absorb the damage. You'll keep doing it because you believe she needs you. But here's the truth. She's not weak. She's selective. She's helpless only when it's convenient. When it benefits her, she's strong, assertive, decisive. But when it's time to take responsibility, suddenly she's just a girl again. Fragile, misunderstood, blameless. It's not vulnerability, it's theater. Over time, this act creates an emotional imbalance. You carry both roles, protector and scapegoat. You shield her from consequences and then get blamed when things go wrong. It's a double bind that drains your confidence while inflating her control. Healthy femininity admits mistakes. It says, I messed up and I'll fix it. Toxic femininity hides behind gender. It says, I can't help it. I'm emotional. One builds trust, the other breeds resentment. So the next time she tilts her head and whispers, I'm just a girl. Listen carefully. What she really means is, I refuse to be accountable. She's not fragile, she's strategic. And if you mistake her performance for innocence, you'll end up carrying the weight of her choices along with the blame for them. Number 5, if you loved me, you would. It sounds romantic, doesn't it? As if love could be proven through action, sacrifice, or obedience. But underneath those 6 words lies a trap so subtle that many men mistake it for devotion. In reality, it's emotional blackmail wrapped in the language of affection. If you loved me, you would is not a request, it's a test. It measures how much of yourself you're willing to give up to keep her satisfied. It takes the purest emotion, love, and turns it into leverage. She's no longer asking for understanding. She's demanding proof. And every time you comply, the bar moves higher. At first, it's small. If you loved me, you'd skip that night out with your friends. Then it grows. If you loved me, you'd stop talking to your ex. Eventually, it becomes, if you loved me, you'd give up who you are. This isn't love. It's a transaction built on guilt. Each concession chips away at your autonomy until you're no longer acting from affection, but from fear. Fear of disappointing her, fear of losing her approval. That fear is how she maintains control. What's most insidious about this phrase is how it weaponizes your best qualities. Loyalty, empathy, protectiveness. It makes you believe that love must hurt, that real devotion requires sacrifice. And so you trade your peace for validation, hoping she'll finally feel secure. But she never will, because this kind of control feeds on insecurity, not connection. Healthy love never says, prove it. It says, I trust it. It doesn't demand evidence. It builds safety. Real love expands your freedom, not your fear. So when you hear, if you loved me, you would remember, she's not asking for reassurance. She's measuring compliance. She doesn't want proof of love. She wants proof of control. Real love never needs to test. It shows itself through peace, not panic, through choice, not coercion. Number 6, just leave then. It sounds final, it sounds like the end, but it's not. This phrase isn't an invitation to go. It's a challenge to stay and prove your devotion one more time. It's control dressed up as indifference. She says it in the middle of an argument when you finally start standing your ground. Just leave then. What she really means is, I bet you won't. It's a calculated bluff, a manipulation that plays on your fear of abandonment. She's gambling that your love will outweigh your pride, that you'll fold before she does. And most men do. They panic, they apologize, they chase, not because they did something wrong, but because they've been conditioned to see her leaving as failure. The moment you back down, the balance shifts permanently. Now she knows she can weaponize your fear of loss anytime she wants to win. This is how psychological control works. Through scarcity, she makes you believe her affection is fragile, temporary, always one argument away from disappearing. So you start walking on eggshells. You censor yourself. You shrink to keep her calm. Each just leave then becomes a leash. Invisible but suffocating. But the truth is she doesn't want you to go. She wants you scared of going. She wants you emotionally indebted to the relationship, terrified of what life looks like without her approval. It's not love that keeps you there. It's conditioning. Healthy partners don't threaten to leave every time they don't get their way. They communicate, they repair, they choose the relationship again and again. Ultimatums are not boundaries, they're emotional hostages. So the next time you hear just leave, then take it literally. Pack your things, walk away without a speech, without anger, without drama. Because the moment you do, the game collapses. She doesn't want you gone, she wants you scared. And the only way to end that power is to stop playing. Now that you've heard the 6 phrases, let's look beneath the surface, because what makes them dangerous isn't the words themselves, it's the psychology behind them. Manipulation works best when it doesn't look like manipulation. Each of these phrases, you owe me, I don't owe you anything, all men are trash, I'm just a girl, if you love me, you would. And just leave then, isn't random, they're patterns. Scripts repeated across relationships, social media, and culture until they feel normal. The first mechanism is conditioning. It's the slow drip of repeated language that trains your nervous system to associate love with anxiety. Every time you react, she learns what keeps you compliant. Over time, you stop thinking. You start predicting, walking through a minefield you can't see. The second is intermittent reinforcement. This is what keeps you hooked. Between every moment of cruelty, there's sweetness. Between every insult, an apology. Between every just leave, then there's a kiss, a tear, a promise. That contrast creates addiction. Not to her love, but to the relief that comes after pain. The third is normalization. Society romanticizes dysfunction. Movies call it passion. Memes call it empowerment. Friends say that's just how relationships are. And before you know it, manipulation becomes tradition and pain becomes proof of love. But here's the truth most people never hear. You can't argue your way out of manipulation. You can only outgrow it. You can't fix someone who profits from your confusion. You can only see the pattern and step out of it. Her words aren't slips of the tongue. They're rehearsed moves in a game of power. Once you recognize them, the illusion dissolves. You stop reacting, you start observing, and the moment you do, the control breaks. Not because she changed, but because you did. When you stop defending yourself to the wrong person, you become untouchable to every manipulator after her. These 6 phrases don't just expose who she is, they reveal something even more important, what you've tolerated and what you've learned to call love. Because every word that diminished you, every phrase that made you question your worth wasn't just manipulation, it was education. Pain is a brutal teacher, but it teaches perfectly. Now you know what to listen for. You know what love isn't? Real love doesn't turn affection into a debt, boundaries into disrespect, or trust into a test. Real love doesn't use fear as leverage or guilt as currency. Real love doesn't need proof, it gives peace. This isn't about hating women, it's about understanding patterns. When you see the pattern, you reclaim your power. Because what you can name, you can control. And what you can see clearly can no longer control you. If you've ever felt like you were losing yourself trying to please someone, this is your wake-up call. You don't have to keep proving you're good enough for someone who only feels powerful when you feel small. You don't have to keep fighting to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you. You don't have to stay. Ask yourself honestly, have you been loved or have you been managed? Have you been chosen or have you been used? The answer might hurt, but clarity always comes before peace. Remember this, real love doesn't owe, test, or threaten. Real women don't hide behind phrases. They show up in truth. Respect is not optional. Accountability is not conditional. If this video hits something real inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Comment which phrase you've heard. It might help another man wake up. Subscribe if you're done being emotionally manipulated and ready to start seeing the patterns for what they are. Because understanding is power and power is peace.